Welcome to Surviving Motherhood. I hope you saw my note up there and you grabbed your Bible and opened up to Matthew 14 verse 22, because today I'd like to take a look at the scriptures with you. Immediately, Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and go on ahead of him to the other side while he dismissed the crowd. After he had dismissed them, he went up on a mountainside by himself to pray. When evening came, he was there alone, but the boat was already a considerable distance from land, buffeted by the waves because the wind was against it. During the fourth watch of the night, Jesus went out to them walking on the lake. When the disciples saw him walking on the lake, they were terrified. "It's a ghost," they said, and cried out in fear. But Jesus immediately said to them, "Take courage, it is I. Don't be afraid." "Lord, if it's you," Peter replied, "tell me to come to you on the water." "Come," he said. Then Peter got down out of the boat, walked on the water, and came toward Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, cried out, "Lord, save me!" Immediately Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. "You of little faith," he said, "why did you doubt?" And when they climbed into the boat, the wind died down. Then those who were in the boat worshipped him, saying, "Truly you are the Son of God." Did you notice the time phrases in this passage? It starts off with immediately in verse 22. Then there's when evening came in verse 23, and during the fourth watch of the night in verse 25. And immediately shows up again in 27 and 31. Now, I'm pretty sure we all know what immediately means. And I'm pretty confident we can figure out what it means when they said, when evening came. But do you know what the fourth watch of the night is? According to Jewish and Roman tradition, the fourth watch of the night was between 3 and 6 in the morning. So, although we don't know exactly what time Jesus walked on the water to the disciples, we know that they had been sitting in the boat for several hours with the waves crashing against them. I imagine the disciples were probably feeling a little seasick. I think they probably wondered why Jesus was in such a rush to get them into the boat and off into the lake. He just was sitting there on the mountain, all alone, praying, peaceful there with God, and the disciples are in the middle of the storm. Do you think they might have felt a little abandoned by Jesus? Have you ever wondered where he is in the middle of your storm? So, after several hours, Jesus walked out onto the water to be with the disciples. And they, in the midst of their storm, are terrified because they think he's a ghost. And this time he responds immediately and says, "Take courage, it is I. Don't be afraid." But Peter wanted proof. So Jesus says, "Okay, come on, walk to me on the water." And when Peter began to sink and he screamed out for help, again, Jesus responded immediately. He grabbed him and said, "You of little faith, why did you doubt?" And I noticed something here. Sometimes Jesus responded immediately to his disciples' needs. And sometimes he waited. Now, I am sure that Jesus was aware of the storm all night long. He knew the disciples needed his help when evening came. But for some reason, he waited until the fourth watch of the night to go to them. The disciples were afraid. They were being tossed around the lake. They needed Jesus. I'll bet they just couldn't wait for the storm to pass. But look at what happened in verses 32 and 33. When Jesus and Peter climbed into the boat, the wind died down. I think we can assume an immediately right here. But the disciples didn't breathe a great big sigh of relief and start celebrating that the storm was over. No, instead, they worshiped Jesus and said, "Truly, You are the Son of God. To be sure, the disciples were waiting for the storm to pass, and it did. But in God's perfect timing, the disciples got so much more than they were waiting for. They saw who Jesus really is, and they were changed. How about you? Are you in the middle of a storm right now? Are you wondering where Jesus is? Do you wish he would respond to you immediately, or at least in the first or second watch of the night? My friend, I don't know when he's going to come to you and calm your storm. It may not be until the fourth watch. But I do know this. His timing is perfect, and you can trust him. So what are you waiting for? When Jesus comes to you, when he calms your storm, don't be surprised if he gives you so much more than you're waiting for.